Working with audio in processing requires us to use a third-party library. So there isn't any native functionality built into processing to be able to work with sound files. So the library of choice when working in the processing environment is the Minim audio library. And on the processing.org website, you can get information about these third-party libraries, and this is one of a few that are available. This one is the one that seems to work pretty well and is fairly straightforward to use. We're not using all of its features. We're just going to use pretty much one of its features, which is the play command. Now, working with an audio file is very much like working with an image file. We end up needing to load that file into memory. So the same way that with our image files, when we looked at those previously, we loaded that, we said load image and specified the image file that was being loaded. Working with the audio file, we say load file and we specify which file we're loading. These files, much like image files, should reside inside your data folder. Now, the class that we are going to be working with is the audio player class. So much like we had our timer class and our catcher class and our drop class and all of those things, when we download by saying import ddf.minim.star, that says access the whole Minim library, we create a new Minim object and we just give it a name of Minim. Now, part of the naming conventions that we're working with here, the items showing up in blue, Minim, audio player, those are the type of objects, much like we have float and integer, pimage, string. In this case, we have Minim and audio player. So Minim is the type of object. Audio player is the type of object. Audio player has a number of methods associated with it, of which one of those will be play, and Minim has a method associated with it of stop. So with this, what we're able to do is we say inside our setup, you will say Minim equals new Minim, and we put the word this inside parentheses. So we make what's referred to as a self-reference. So we're referencing the object itself that is being created. And then we are able to create with our different audio players. I have a sound effects audio player and a music audio player. If you want to have simultaneous sounds playing, so if you want music in the background and then you want to overlay that with 1, 2, 3, or 4 possible simultaneous sound effects at the same time, each sound will need to have its own audio player object. If we're only just going to play music, we would only need one audio player. So think of these as different channels of sound. If I want to have more than one channel of sound playing at the same time, I need more than one audio player because each audio player can only hold one sound at any given time. Then I tell that audio player object, I access the Minim load file and it grabs the file I want it to load, and then repeat that for my second audio player object. And now I access the first method that I have for my audio player object, and that is play. I say dot play. By doing this, it tells the sound to start playing. But we are able to specify where we want the sound to play in milliseconds within the sound file. And that's what the 0 is. The 0 says, start playing the sound from the beginning. If I don't do that, and I play a short sound file, and then tell that sound file to play again, it doesn't automatically rewind when it gets to the end. So the playback position of that sound file will be whatever it's at, so that if I start at the beginning and it starts playing, If I get to the end and say play again, well, it's at the end. It's not going to now start the sound over unless I put a number in there like 0 that says go back to the beginning. If my sound has a little bit of emptiness at the beginning, I may want to choose a different starting point. And that 0 is a reference to a number in milliseconds of where we are in that sound. So if I wanted to start 1 second in, I would put 1000 inside those parentheses. And that would start me 1 second in within my audio file. So line 10 says music play from the beginning. Now in my draw function, I say, hey, if the mouse is pressed, tell my sound effect sound to play from 0. The stop portion that we have here at the end, we tell each of our audio players to close, we tell minimum to stop, and then we tell super stop. So we're telling, in essence, we're telling the kind of the parent object of the minimum class to stop as well. And then that cancels and kills all the current playing audio. So when you add audio to your project, you take this little void stop and you list your different audio player objects. You list minimum and then you do a super and you just put that in there and be done with it. Forget about it and just know that that's part of the process of dealing with sound. And just accept you need to put that in there. Now if I test this movie, we have music playing in the background, and every time the mouse is registered as being pressed down, it plays pop sound. It's very difficult for me to actually get my mouse pressed to register even just a single click when my project is playing at 60 frames a second. I have to very lightly and quickly tap the mouse to get it to do a single click. Otherwise, that's why you heard multiple pops going on. So, import statement, new minimum object, then audio player objects for each of your different channels of sound that you want. If the sounds don't need to play simultaneously and they will never be playing at the same time, then you can reuse or apply different sounds to it. But it's generally easier, and in most projects you're not going to have more than 3 or 4 sounds anyway, that you set up each sound with its own audio player, because that gives you discrete and precise control over that particular sound. So you can say, I want the sound to play here, I want it to play here, I want it to start here, I want it to start in its middle, I want it to start in its end. You have the options, you have control. So that really is all it takes to add sound to a project. So incorporating into the game file is just putting the pieces into their respective correct places. So I can copy that, put that up in the beginning. As a standard practice, import statements typically are always the first thing to appear within a document file. I'm going to leave it here so it's just nicely chunked, but normally that would be where you would want that to occur. Now I can grab these chunks and put them into my setup, matching what's already in the setup. So I've now copied over my import and variable declarations. I've initialized my sound files inside my setup. Now I'm going to go add the stop function into it, and I'll just put that at the very bottom. And then at this point, it's really going to be a matter of just inside play game, I can tell my sound effect to play. So when a sound has been caught, I can tell it to play, but I do need to remember to tell it to play from 0 so that it always starts the sound effect over. Otherwise, it will start the sound playing at whatever the current position is for the sound. And when it starts, there's music in the background. So at this point, it would be a matter of if I wanted different sound files for each of the different states of my game, a winning music, a losing music, maybe even a starting music that is different from the actual gameplay music. I would set those up in their own audio player so I could control their playbacks, getting them to rewind when I need them to rewind, getting them to play when I need them to play. And if I had additional sound effects that I wanted to play, I could have, say, a different sound play when the objects hit the bottom of the screen. So I may want to make a different sound fire off when I miss things and they hit the bottom of the screen. So we can add in multiple sound effects, we can add in multiple music files, and really create a very rich experience with this.